Om Mahaganapataye Namaha. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to build a billionaire's brain and why your brain is so important. And I'm also going to share a technique given by Dr. Ply recently. So, regarding the brain and why your brain is so important, I encourage you to read a book by David Eagleman, the neuroscientist, called The Brain and You, I believe is the name of it. This book is a fantastic resource to understand how your brain is basically at the center of your entire life. So all of the decisions you make, all of the intelligence you have, everything about you, your identity, whether you're good at something, you're bad at something, is coming back to your brain. So if you want to change one thing in your life, it is your brain. Can your brain be changed? This is a good question, and up until recently, scientists were under the impression that the brain stopped forming at around the age of 22 or 25. It turns out with other studies, follow-up studies, that even as an adult, our brain is still in a state of change. They call it as neuroplasticity. Plasticity signifies a certain flexibility, or the brain's sort of a modular organ, which essentially is molding itself to what we focus on and how we think. For example, there's one study that's out there that was referenced in this book by David Eagleman about these London cab drivers. They have to go through this rigorous 4-year training in order to be qualified or certified as a cab driver. And part of this training, the major part of it, is memorizing something like over 20,000 different roads and all of their permutation combinations. You can imagine different uh, how many different examples they would have to memorize, plus all of these different locations, like landmarks and all these things. And they have to get tested and they have to memorize all these things. And what they found out was that these people's brains were adapting in order to do this by their hippocampus. The hippocampus is associated with memory. And they were finding that these people's hippocampuses were growing to accommodate that. Because they were focusing on memorization, their hippocampus compensated accordingly. And similarly, they're finding out that the brain is affecting all kinds of things. For example, when people are getting brain damage, parts of their brain are getting hurt, all of a sudden they become interested in gambling, or they have depression, or they have all these different really unique preferences. They become more violent or they become more peaceful, because all of this is coming from the brain. The brain is sort of like the massive computer software or the hardware that all the information that we take from the inside and all the information coming from our genetics is being expressed through. And what it comes down to is decisions. Your life is as you are now, whether it's what kind of health you have, the kind of relationships that you have, the kind of money you have, the kind of joy you have inside, is nothing but a culmination of all the decisions you've made up until this point in the past. So the brain is the most important thing. Now, going back to this uh, brain as a constant state of flux, even as you're an adult, even when you're older. They're also showing like pianists will have grow certain areas of the brain because of the way that they are using their fingers. So when I say build a billionaire's brain, this is literally true. You can actually build a billionaire's brain. I won't get too much into this to keep this video relatively short, but you can go and do your own research, and I encourage you to do that, because when you do your own research on this, you'll start seeing and understanding and experiencing for yourself what this actually is, and it'll give you such clarity and insights. In general, brain is made up of certain parts of the brain, and it's not just the parts of the brain, but it's how they're all connected as well. So it's sort of like if you can imagine a circuit board. Certain parts of the brain are functioning at a higher level, certain parts of the brain are functioning at a lower level. Certain parts of the brain are wired together, and how they're wired together depends on your thought process. And as you get older, there are these neural pathways, which are sort of the highways of the thought energy that goes to the brain, or the circuits, if you will, become more concretized. But they can be changed by focusing intensely on something new. And this is a very important point, is if you want to change your life, you have to do something outside your norm. Otherwise, you will continue to progress down a path of destiny that is preset based on your conditioning, which has been given to you from a young age when your brain was in a high state of malleability or plastic. And the conditioning came from your genetics, and it came from the outside, from your parents, all the authority figures in your life, all the media, and everything you consumed. So in general, everything that we take in through the five senses is shaping our brain. All the actions we take are shaping our brain. All the thoughts we have continue to shape our brain. The only difference between an adult and a child is because we have such concretized neural pathways that when we have something new come on, it's much easier to not, it's harder, much harder to stick because we are so firm. Whereas a child is more malleable, more like a sponge, where new things can come in and they can easily change, where it's different for adults. But this is where this technology of mantras come in. So when I talk about building a billionaire's brain, we're talking about using sound waves to reshape the brain and create a new geometry inside the brain, changing the way it's wired, activating certain areas of the brain by activating, making them more active, stimulating them. We found what Dr. Plies found with research using fMRI with Harvard Medical School, with Brain Science International, and using QEEG, that to the surprise of scientists, these sounds are not just limited to the auditory cortex, which is the part of the brain associated with hearing. They are actually going into parts of the brain, such as the anterior cingulate, the cerebellum, the midbrain complex. All these different areas of the brain that shouldn't be connected to sound, but somehow these sounds are going in and activating them. Activating them is defined as increasing the blood flow and also increasing the neuronal firing. Therefore, they become active or activated, and therefore they become more prominent. So you're getting access to more of the cognitions, the intelligences associated with these different parts of the brain. So the sound Shrim Brzee in particular is the sound to build a billionaire brain. So what Dr. Ply gave in a recent workshop is you just close your eyes, and I'll send a link I'll put a link in the description of this video. You can go watch this video. You close your eyes. You pull your attention in between your two eyebrows, in the space in between your two eyebrows. Feel that space and visualize a very thin 1 to 2 inch vertical line originating at the space in between your two eyebrows and going up vertically on your forehead. And then you take the sounds Shrim Brzee and you chant them into that line, such as Shrim Brzee, Shrim Brzee. You're going to associate that sensation of that thin line with the sounds as you chant them. You can also think them. It's best to start out chanting them, and if you want and it feels right, then you could take it inside. And you keep doing this over and over and over and over and over again. In the yoga tradition, they have a saying is, your mind has to become the mantra. Because what's happening here is, when you are focusing on these sounds, Shrim Brzee, your brain is molding into Shrim Brzee. So your brain becomes what you think about. If you're taking in a whole bunch of data about, say, I don't know, you're watching a bunch of violent movies, your brain's going to change accordingly. If you're taking in a bunch of information where you have to memorize things, just as the example of the London cab drivers, your brain's going to change accordingly. It's going to adapt itself to be supercharged for memory. And similarly with Shrim Brzee, when you're taking in the sounds Shrim Brzee, you're creating a wealth brain. What is a wealth brain? Some of the characteristics of a wealth brain are creativity, extreme optimism. Creativity plus optimism equals productivity. Because it's not that a lot of people are creative, but then they talk themselves out of their ideas. Also, the ability to make precise decision making, the CEO brain, who are be able to take in all this information and be able to discriminate it perfectly and make perfect decisions. These are some of the characteristics of a wealth brain that Shrim Brzee will create. So I hope this video helps you, and I encourage you, something that I've been reflecting on is meditate on creating a Shrim Brzee brain. When I say meditate, when someone says meditate on something, it means holding on to the concept of your brain being changed into a Shrim Brzee brain. Your brains, you feel you're using the sound Shrim Brzee, and the concept you're holding on to when you're using Shrim Brzee, the intention that you're holding on to, because all these things are very important in particle physics. The intention is your brain is changing to adapt itself to Shrim Brzee. Just like a seed of a mango tree creates the entire tree and the fruit. Similarly, the sound chambers are like seeds that will sprout and create the tree, which is your brain, and you get to enjoy the fruit of wealth consciousness or wealth manifestation. So I hope this video helps provide some interesting concepts and tips and insights on how you can begin to enjoy the inner wealth you already have, that is your brain. It is your treasure. And if you unlock your treasure, if you use your treasure correctly, you can enjoy a beautiful, beautiful life. And it's all in your brain. Please leave a comment or any questions you may have underneath this video. And as always, if you'd like to be notified for future videos, click subscribe and the bell notification. God bless.